Welcome to episode 13 of Literally Speaking All Things AIS, the official podcast of Augusta Independent School District. I'm Tim Literal, and we hope everyone enjoyed their spring break this past week. Today we'll start with a few quick updates from around the district, and then we'll talk with Alison Bach before wrapping up with our In the Loop segment. We'll begin with AISD Headlines, a segment to share important district news and celebrate accomplishments. Robin Kelch was recently inducted into the Class of 2026 KABC Court of Honor. The Court of Honor is an award from the Kentucky Association of Basketball Coaches recognizing individuals who have made significant, lasting contributions to basketball in Kentucky, particularly at the high school level. The honor is typically given to former coaches and influential contributors to the game of basketball. Kelch coached the Augusta Panthers from 1998 until 2011, when he resigned to accept the principal's position. After a couple of years away from the sidelines, he returned as an assistant coach with the girls program. In 2016, after the girls head coach had to unexpectedly step away from the team, Kelch once again took on a head coaching role and coached the Lady Panthers until 2020. Kelch was recognized on the floor at Rupp Arena during the boys' Sweet 16 tournament on March 20th. The freshman class is hosting a spring semiformal dance for 6th through 8th grade students. The dance will be April 18th from 8 until 10 p.m. Admission is $10 per student, which includes food and a 360 camera. Contact Tanner Kelch or Paige McCord with any questions. Today, we're joined by one of our school administrators, Alison Bach. Alison, start by telling us about your educational background and career.
Thanks for having me today, Mr. Literal. I went to NKU out of high school knowing I wanted to go into education. Entering college, I thought I wanted to be in high school math education, but I quickly realized that I was supposed to be in elementary education. So I was graduating in the spring of 2011 with my elementary education degree with a math minor. I did my student teaching in the spring of 2011 here at Augusta. I fell in love with the place. At the end of my student teaching, I finished the year as a full-time sub in the high school math classroom. Since I loved it here, I almost went back and kind of changed it so I could teach high school math, but then it happened the way it was supposed to happen, and we had an opening in the 4th grade classroom, and I was able to take that position, and I taught in the 4th grade classroom and intermediate math for 12 years before going into the administration route. I also have my master's in special education and then, of course, my principalship.
What was your why for moving into administration?
I never thought I would go into any kind of administration role. My mom was a teacher. I grew up listening to her experience teaching. And if it was based on that experience, I never thought I would have went into administration. I just, I didn't want to work all summers. I didn't want to be in that position. But the longer I taught and as the teachers in the elementary levels, as they started to retire or go to other positions, I was left as the veteran teacher. I was also a digital learning coach, so I just stepped into kind of a natural leadership role. And what I really enjoyed was with some of the things that I like to do, technology and professional learning. If I thought they could help another teacher, I would sit down with them, help them create lessons, and I really enjoyed seeing the changes that I was able to help them make to their instruction or something that I could help them develop. So to me, a teacher teaches students, a principal is just a teacher of teachers, and I really wanted to help lead the charge here at Augusta. I came during Miss McCain's first year as superintendent. Well, my student teaching was her last year as a principal. So to see what she did in her role, to see what Mr. Kelch has done in his role, to really be effective here at Augusta, you have to understand Augusta, the students, the climate, the culture. If someone were to come from outside of Augusta into the leadership role, I felt like maybe something would be lost. So I really wanted to go into administration to help build upon what they had done so far in their career and help Augusta go, in the future.
Common thing you hear in leadership positions and many careers and many aspects of life, it's all about relationships. How do you attempt to build authentic professional relationships with the staff?
Well, since I did work here for 12 years before I went into the administration role, obviously that gave me a leg up. I already had really close relationships with my coworkers. I saw the relationships that Mr. Kelch and Ms. Brewer had made with the staff, so I modeled a lot after them. You know, one thing that they always did, they were always there to listen to me, check in on me, and I've done that myself. You know, having a personal relationship with your coworkers, it really comes down to respect, because some people say an administrator can't really be friends with your coworkers. I don't think that's quite the case, but it has to be built on respect. And when you take the time to build that respect, it all comes down to accountability. That person trusts you enough to know if you have to make a correction, if you have to make a suggestion, they know that it's coming from a place you want them to grow. Whenever I hear from the grapevine that something is going on, I tend to pop in their room instead of having them come to me. Teachers, that planning period is their hour of the day to get as much work done as possible. So I try to pop in at least once a week into a teacher's classroom during their planning time so that they don't always have to come to me. One thing, I'm not too proud to admit that when I've made a mistake, you know, there's been times that I've had an idea and maybe it wasn't the best one, and hey, I'm sorry, let's sit down and figure this out together. And always, actions speak louder than words. You can say that you're going to be supportive or you're always there. If you need anything, let me know. But actually being there if they need something. Keep showing up so that they know that you have your back during, you know, the easy times, so that when a hard time does come, either in their personal life or professionally in their classroom, they know that correction, that advice is still coming out of a place of trust and love.
Being a school administrator, every day looks different. There's always, as they say, fires to put out. But take us through a somewhat typical day and what that looks like for you.
This was probably about the hardest part of the transition from the classroom to the administration role. You know, when you're a teacher, you have a lesson plan for each class you teach, and it's always good to overplan. So maybe you didn't get to the last activity, you can pick it up the next day, but still in the classroom, you pretty much know exactly how your day is going to go. As an administrator, that's not the truth. There's some days that I have a list of things that I need to do, and 8:15 the plan changes. So that was hard to adjust, and adjust how, you know, as a teacher you feel successful if you get through your lesson plan. And so I really had to adjust to what did I do that day that was successful, even if I didn't do anything on my list. But every day starts out the same. Our administrative team in the office, we get together real quick. Did anything happen from the day before to that day? Is there anyone that's absent that we might need to check in on, kind of get the plan for the day? I'm either in morning walkthroughs or afternoon walkthroughs. I kind of block out my schedule. So I have a little bit of a plan for the day, and most of the time I can block out my schedule enough to get everything checked through. But like I said, there's days when the day makes the plan for you and not you make the plan for the day.
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, in a different type of administrative role, it's often the same thing, because I always have a to-do list, and sometimes there's items that gets pushed from day to day because you have to prioritize what's most important in the moment, but also what's due today versus what's due next week. Just to clarify, not clarify, but for our maybe non-education listeners, obviously when you say a walkthrough, you mean going into classrooms and visiting classrooms. Talk about how that sort of is a a big part of your job.
Yeah, I do. In my role as one of the principals here at Augusta, I do take on more of the instructional leadership role. So I'm popping into classrooms, either formally or informally. Some of it's scheduled. Sometimes I pop in to model a strategy or co-teach. Usually that's more of a planned walkthrough. Other ones would be more informal, just popping in to get that quick snapshot of the learning that's happening in that day.
Standardized test scores are, of course, one data point, probably the most public that the people in the community would see for assessing a school. But what hidden data do you look at to determine if a school's instructional health is improving?
We've been talking a lot about this week with the upcoming standardized test in May. And that's one thing that we talked about is from the outside, everybody looks at those standardized test data, which paints, like you said, a very small picture of what's happening here. So for me to look to if our instructional health is improving, if we are being successful, the number of teachers that I have engaging in professional learning, I find that as a good gauge on how our instructional health is improving. What types of professional learning they are going to. Is it teaching strategies that they're wanting to work on? Do they want to improve how engaging their lessons are? And then this year, we're looking at the number of classrooms that have an HQIR, or highly qualified instructional resource, is what that fancy acronym stands for. So I'm looking at all the little ways that these teachers either need to improve or have indicated that they want to improve in, and just the steps we're taking to meet those.
You have a passion, I think, for technology, and you mentioned your prior and what was really still current role was kind of hold that door role as digital learning coach. I think there's sometimes a public perception that we keep students on their devices all day long. Mm-hmm. That's not the case in reality. Technology certainly has a place. It's not all day long, and I've always advocated as the technology director here that it should be used, but it should be used when it's beneficial and makes sense, not just for the sake of using it. Talk about the role that technology can play in the classroom and how it can be beneficial.
Absolutely. I was, like you said, I was the digital learning coach. That role came to me because of my passion for technology. I was always interested in technology myself, aside from teaching. So when I started, we had one cart of about 30 iPads that passed around as a week. And then the longer I was in the classroom, by the time I exited, we were one-to-one with Chromebooks, which to me, that was so much easier to plan, having that device in there every day. I taught mainly math. So a lot of people, think math needs to be done pencil and paper, and I still absolutely agree with that. But technology can do so much to enhance your lesson. With math, we needed a lot of practice. For me to run off a worksheet and maybe someone wouldn't finish that in 5 minutes, I use technology as a way to keep generating work, to keep my students engaged from the moment they stepped in my room until they left. With anything in education, or you could probably say in any career you are, it's not so much the tools that you're using, but the intention behind them. When we first started having, Chromebooks used more one-to-one, and people would come in, even when they were doing walkthroughs in my own classroom, it's not just a check mark, is the computer, or, is there a computer out? Is the whiteboard turned on? For me, it was more what, like I said, intention has been put into using that technology effectively. I think a lot of people, when they think about technology in the classroom, they think those Chromebooks are just being used to play a game, to placate time. We have 15 minutes left, just go ahead and get on your Chromebooks. And if that's the case, then yeah, technology is being misused. But if that intention is there to differentiate, meaning to meet every level of learner, then that could be an extremely beneficial thing. I taught 4, 5, 6, and when you have that hour-long math class, it makes it really hard for you to do centers, because there's one of me, and keeping centers moving, even if they were on a 10 or 15-minute rotation, it's still a lot of jumping around. So I used technology as a way to increase that engagement throughout the whole classroom, to provide enrichment for some students. If we were on a concept that they had already mastered, I didn't want them just sitting there doing nothing or doing problems that they already knew how to do. I could use technology to get them to the next step, to create pathways for them to advance their learning. At the same time, if there were students in my classroom who were struggling with the content at hand, when I wasn't working with them, they could be getting remedial lessons or engaging in that work that maybe they had missed from a couple years before. So when you look at how it can be used to meet all learners, to increase that engagement, sometimes if you give a kid a bunch of math problems and they see that right from the beginning, some of those kids are going to shut down. Oh my gosh, all they see is a page full of work. But you could take those 30 problems and put it into, I did a lot of Google slide, kind of like, not really scavenger hunts, but they could be solving problems in some kind of scenario. They could complete the same 30 problems, but it doesn't seem like work, just of how it's presented. So yeah, it's all about the intentionality behind it.
And intentionality really comes to mind, because certainly there are some things that are good on the Chromebooks because it does assist the teacher. For example, if you take a worksheet that's maybe multiple choice and you put it in a Google form, that's great. Sure, that improves efficiency, but we're not looking, as you kind of mentioned, just for that.
Yes.
You want things that can spur, whether it's critical thinking skills, creativity,
Collaboration, all those big C words.
those big C words that sometimes, not saying you can't do them on paper pencil, but the Chromebook or technology in general just provides so many more opportunities for those types of skills.
Yes.
We'll continue with part 2 of our conversation with Mrs. Bach on our next episode. We're skipping our AIS spotlight with it being spring break, but we'll be back to highlighting a program on our next episode. Before we wrap up, it's time to keep you in the loop. Juniors will take the state SAT test on April 7th. The next Board of Education meeting is April 9th at 6 o'clock, and the spring middle school semi-formal dance will be April 18th. That's it for today. We appreciate Alison Bach for joining us. New episodes drop on the first and third Friday of each month, so we'll be back on April 17th with episode 14. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'm Tim Literal, and this has been Literally Speaking, all things AIS. Until next time, stay connected, stay learning, and stay Panther proud.